What's going on, guys, and welcome to another video tutorial. My name's Caleb, and today I'm going to be going over how to create a project within Taiga. I'm going to be covering the functionality of the Kanban module within Taiga, how to configure its various settings, attributes, and permission sets. This is the first video of a multi-video series, including how to do sprints, implement Scrum methodologies, and create and link to epics. The last video of the series is going to be how to deploy a Taiga server consisting of 9 different containers. Thanks for watching and stay tuned. All right, let's just jump right into it. So the first thing you're going to do after deploying the server, and I'll cover this more in the last video on how to deploy the server, you're going to create a super user. That super user is going to have to create a project and then add people to it. I'm going to go into greater detail on how to do that, but once you add somebody to the server, they're going to get an email. They're going to be asked to create an account, and then once they do so, you're going to get a second email to confirm your email address. Once you do that, when you log in, you're going to see a screen similar to what you see right here behind me. It's going to show the project that you were added to and not a whole bunch else. If you click here on projects, it'll show you a list of all the projects that you've been added to. Now, once you've been added to a project and you're on the server and you've been verified, you're going to have the option to create a new project. Anybody who's added to the server can create a new project, and nobody will be able to see the project that you create unless you add people to it. You can add anybody that you want to it. So if you have a team lead that invites you in and you come up with another project for your team, you can create a project, and that's the focus of this video. It's to show you how to create a project and then how to operate the Kanban board. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a demonstration project. So I'm going to click on New Project. The very first time, it's going to ask you if you want to receive news, updates, and recommendations. I don't want that, so I'm going to say don't ask again, and then save preferences. It's then going to give you 4 options. The first one is to create a Scrum-based methodology project. The second is to create a Kanban methodology-based project. The third option is to duplicate a project. So if you duplicate a project, it'll come up with a drop-down list of all the other projects you have access to, where you can duplicate the roles, responsibilities, attributes, and settings of another project that you're a member of. The last one is to import a project, and I'll touch on this a little bit later in the video. But you do have the ability, once you configure everything, you can export a project into, let's say, a template, or as a backup, and then you can import that project and change around the members that are a part of that project. So if you put a lot of time and effort into customizing attributes and settings, you can export that before you get too far into the project, and you can use that as a template for future projects. For this demonstration, I'm going to click on Kanban. Now, there's 3 required elements here. You have to select a project name. In this case, I'm going to put in YouTube demo. You have to put a description. Now, obviously, you would want to put something that actually describes your project. You could put the end state that you desire, anything of the sort. In this particular case, I'm just going to put demo project. The last required element is you have to select public project or private project. The difference is a public project is going to be visible and viewable by anybody who has the URL to the Taiga server. They do not have to log in to see a public project. So if you're doing open source work, or you're doing work for public service or anything like that, you can create a public project so that the public, anybody without a username and password, can go to your site, see public projects, and they will have the ability to comment on any of the tasks within that project. I expect that the use case for most people watching this video will want their project to be private. So I'm going to select private project and then create. So right away, it's going to drop me straight into the Kanban board, because that was the option that I selected for this project as the default. If I click up here on projects, you'll see I had the original project I was added to, plus the project that I just created. I'm going to go ahead and click into that. Before I get too far, I do want to cover a couple of things. So when a new project is created and you click on that project, you're going to get the overview page. The overview page right now doesn't look like much, but this is going to have a running log of everybody who has done everything within the project. Doesn't matter how small or how big the modification is, if somebody changes something within this project, it's going to be listed here. So for change management purposes or change tracking purposes, you're going to have a running list of every change that was made to every single task within this project, who did it, and when. Okay, so the next tab is the Kanban board. If I click on Kanban, it's going to bring me to the actual Kanban board. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'm zoomed in a little bit. Normally, you would be zoomed out a little bit more so that you can see all of the columns that are available. But as you can see, the default here is new items, ready items, in progress items, ready for test, done, and then archive items. Archive items are removed from viewership, it's removed from graphs, it's removed from statistics. And I'm going to show you some of these things a little bit later. But once you move something into archive, it's essentially removed from the project. But it still exists in the archive. So if there is a project in the future that maybe is similar to a project that has happened in the past, you can go back and pull out all of the tasks within the archive section of the previous project, and you can revive them, for lack of a better word, so that you can see what had to be done to accomplish that project. I usually like to leave this archive section minimized. So there's a little arrow here. You can minimize it so that it will appear just as a little bar over on the side. Any of these can be minimized so that they appear just as a little bar. Okay. So the next thing I'd like to go over is how to create tasks. When I get into the Scrum video, which I believe will be the next video that I produce, I'm going to go in a little bit more detail on how the Scrum side works. But something I want to mention, any change that is made on the Kanban board will be reflected automatically on Scrum boards. So the first thing I'm going to do in this particular example is I'm going to create a number of example tasks. So under New, I'm going to click the plus button. When I click the plus button, it's going to pop up and ask me to create a new user story. The first thing I'm going to type in here is plan YouTube script. I have the option to go in and put comments. I have a drop down that asks which category I want this new task to appear in. I'm gonna leave it with the default, which is new. I have the option to assign this task to somebody. It can be either somebody or a role, which I'll cover here in a little bit. A role is a group of people like design or front end or back end or marketing or sales, what have you. You can define however many roles that you want, and you can add a team of people to that role. Once a number of members are assigned to that role, you can assign this task to the entire role, which will provide notification to everybody on that team that something has been assigned to them, or you can assign it to a specific person. There's also a point system here. So my head's in the way a little bit. Let me move. These are all customizable sections. These are the predefined roles that exist within this project. You can see we have UX, which is short for user experience, design, front end, and back end. At the bottom, you have a total number of points. So I'm gonna cover this a little bit in detail. Once you define roles, this point system can be used in a number of different ways. One way is to create an estimate of the number of hours it will take for the user experience team to complete this task. In this case, I could say, I expect it'll take 1 hour for user experience, I expect it'll take 1 hour for design. It'll take 2 hours for the back end, and it'll take 1 hour for the front end. Now again, these are roles that can be customized within your project. Once you assign roles within a project, they will appear in all of the tasks. So you can assign these and customize these as you see fit. You can also create attachments. You have a number of buttons down here. The first button is to set a due date. If you do that, you can set a due date. You can tag this as being a team requirement that's required but has no cost for the client. Okay, so this tags it essentially as an internal task that doesn't cost anything for the client. It's something that's required for the team to do, but it's not something that affects the client. The next button over is a client requirement that is a new requirement not previously expected and is required to be a part of the project. So if this task contributes to an unexpected requirement that supports the project, you can tag this button here. The last button is blocked. When a task is blocked, it means that it's a task that needs to get done, but it requires somebody else to do something or another task to be completed before this task can be finished. If you tag a task as blocked, it will appear differently in the Kanban board. So I'm going to untag all of these. I don't want any due date. Well, now that I've selected one, it won't let me unselect one. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is due about a week from now, and I'm going to create this task. As you can see, it created a little card. It says plan YouTube script, and it is not assigned. Now, if I assign this to somebody, it will tell you who that task is assigned to. So the first thing I'm going to do is go back into this task. You'll notice that now I have a section where I can make comments. Whatever comments you filled in on the when you created the task will appear here, but this is updatable and editable. I would encourage anybody who does anything related to this task, you make a detailed list of comments here, detailing what you did to support this task. This one shows all of the work that was done to complete this task, and if this project is ever revived in the future, you'll be able to go back and see what was done so that you can make decisions on future projects. Okay, now scrolling down a little bit, you can see tasks. These are subordinate tasks. So we created a user story that says plan YouTube script. I can create a subordinate task that says ask Chat GPT for a script. I'm going to create another task. I have to save it first. I'm going to create another task that says rehearse. By the way, and if you couldn't tell, I haven't planned this. I haven't chat GPT'd it, and I haven't rehearsed it. I'm kind of flying off the seat of my pants here. But you can create tasks that are subordinate to the main task in order to accomplish the main task. Note, over here on the right-hand side, I still have access to the point system. I have a drop-down so that I can move it between the different categories, the different status categories. Here at the bottom, or in the middle, I can click Assigned, Add Assigned, and it'll pop up with a number of people. It'll pop up with a list of people, rather, that are added to this project, and it will also list all of the roles. Right now, there's only one person assigned to any role in this project because I just created it, and that is myself, Caleb Cassette. So I am the product owner, and I can also select myself. I'm going to select myself and click Add. Notice it now says that this task is assigned to me. I'm going to move out of the way a little bit. You also have a section right here that says Watchers. So if you were added to this task as a stakeholder, for example, or if you were added in any role or capacity, you may really care about this particular task. Even though nothing is assigned to you, you might want to pay close attention to the movement and the modifications that occur on this task. If you click Watch, it will notify you anytime there is any change to this task whatsoever. Now, because I'm already assigned to this task, I don't have to click watch. Because I'm assigned, any modification to this task, I will automatically be notified about it. Okay? So, but there's an unlimited number of watchers. If you're in a corporate setting and the CEO, for whatever reason, is really interested in this particular task, he can become a watcher. Your manager can become a watcher, and they will be notified anytime this task is updated or changed. So it's a powerful way to monitor what matters to you. I'm going to move back over. You can see down at the bottom we have the same buttons that we had when we created this task. We have the option to set a due date, mark it as internal, new client requirement, blocked, or we can delete this entire task. If we move down just a little further, actually, I'm going to have to move my screen a bit. I apologize. I'm going to make it so that you can see the whole window. If I scroll down, here at the bottom, there's a comments section, okay? Regardless of who has what level of permission within this project, even if you're just, by default, there's a role called stakeholder, and I'll cover that in a second. But if you're a stakeholder, you have essentially read-only permission to everything within this project. But even as a stakeholder, you can come in here and you can make a comment. For example, the CEO should not be necessarily going into individual departments' projects and moving cards around and changing the description, things like that, right? But the CEO may have some comments or some input to a task or a project. Anybody who's assigned at least the stakeholder role can come in here and make comments on the project. This is whether they've been assigned to the project or not. A cool feature is if you do the little @ symbol, it will come up with a drop down of everybody who has access to this project, and you can tag people. If you tag somebody in a comment, they'll get an email notification that a comment was made on their task. This will also apply if there's a watcher on this task. So if I make a comment, anybody who is watching this task will also be notified that a comment was made on this task. So I'm going to go ahead and select myself, and I'm going to say, great job. Now, when I save this, anybody who is watching this task or who is involved in this task, whether you're an assignee, you're a member of a role that is assigned, or you're a watcher, will get a notification that this comment was made. Now, remember earlier when I said on the home screen that you get a running list of everything that happened? Well, I just went back there, and now you can see that I've created a task, I have modified the task, I have added subordinate tasks to that card, and I've assigned users to the task. So this is a running list. Once you start having a lot of tasks within a project, this screen is going to become overwhelming, especially if you have a large number of people contributing to the project. But what if you want to know only what has happened with this particular card? If we go back into the card and scroll down to the comment section, right next to it is activities. When you click on that, it will show you everything that has taken place specifically with this card. It's not going to cover the creation of the card, but anything that happens after the card is created, it will be listed here. So if you want to kind of drill down and see exactly what's been happening with this particular task, you can click on activities and see everything that has happened. Okay, so the next part, all of these columns are various statuses. These cards can be dragged between the various statuses. So ideally, it's still being developed. Whoever created the card is still kind of planning it out. Maybe they're coming up with subordinate tasks, they're populating it with attachments, so on and so forth. While those things are happening, this card should remain in the new column. Once the card is ready to be executed, you can simply drag and drop and move it over to ready. Then other members of the team can take it and action it. Specifically, whatever role or team member was assigned the card will take it and action it. As it moves through the various stages of progress, you can move it amongst the different columns. And as I've done the things that I've done, going back to the running list, you can see everything that I've done with this card. I've changed the status from from new to ready to in progress to ready for test. So everything I've done with this card has been logged. I go back to the Kanban board, move this card back to new, open it up, and as you can see, for activities, all of the movement of this card has been captured within the card. Another thing you can do is add tags. So let's say this particular task involves the IT department. I can do a hashtag IT. I can give it a special color, and I can save. This tag makes this card searchable, and it makes it easy to identify when you're looking at the board. Going back to the Kanban board, you can't see anything different. If you look over here to the right, that's because our zoom level is at default. If you go down to compact zoom level, notice it took all of the details out. It will show the picture of the person who is assigned, and it will show the number associated with the task. That's really not a lot of information. If we go back to the default, it'll at least tell you what the task name is. If you open it up to detailed, well, now you can see that we assigned 5 points to this task, that there is a due date, that there is one person watching, one comment, and now you see this red bar. This red bar represents the color of the tag that I tagged it with. If you go to expanded view, it'll show you even more. Instead of just the red bar, it'll tell you what the tag actually is. So within the red bar, it says IT, and then it will also show you all of the subordinate tasks required to accomplish this card. So I usually like to keep expanded view on. Another thing you can do, if you add an image in the comments or you attach an image, it will actually give you a representation of that image on the card itself. So to do that, or to demonstrate that, I'm going to grab a picture of my family. I'm going to paste it in there. When I save it, it's going to add it as an attachment, as you can see right here. And then when I go back to the Kanban board, it actually gives you a representation of the image. If you have multiple images or multiple documents, it's going to display the most recent one that was added to this card. And as you move this card around, all of the attributes stay the same. If you move back to detailed view, it's still going to show you a good bit of information, but it's not going to actually give you a representation of what's inside. So whatever attachment or photo you add to the card will be represented if you're in expanded view. The next thing I want to go over is how to bulk add items. So to create this card, I clicked the little plus symbol here to add a new user story. Right next to it is add new bulk. When you click on that, it's going to ask for a new line separated list of all the tasks that you want to create. So here real quick, I'm going to type a number of tasks, and they will all, like each new line will be represented as a separate card. Okay, so I fast forwarded a little bit, but here you can see I have a list of various tasks that I would like to create with a status of new. Every task is on its own on a new line. I'm going to click Save, and you'll see in the new column, I now have a new card for every single task that I listed on that previous screen. Now, none of these cards have any comments or details or points assigned or anything of the sort, but it's a way for me to rapidly add tasks so that I can go in and modify them. Or as the manager of a team, I may create the tasks, and I may have a change management guy who goes in and does the assignments and fills in the details. But as the manager, I may want to create a series of tasks, and then somebody else can go in, because again, it's in the new column, which means it's kind of in development. It's not ready to be executed yet. somebody can go in and add the appropriate information. Once a card is ready to be executed, it gets moved over into the ready column, and then the team can take it for action and go for it. The next thing that I want to cover is how to do a search. Now remember earlier when I tagged that one card with IT, hashtag IT? If I do a search for the hashtag, it's going to pop up with the user story that matches that. You can search for names of cards, you can search for details within the card, you can search for document names, or you can search for tags. The search button is really helpful if you have a really large project with a large number of tasks. You can quickly find the task that you're looking for. You can also search by assignee. So if you want to see how many tasks somebody has, you can type in their name and you'll get a list of all the tasks that are assigned or associated with that individual. It's a good way to find out if somebody is overtasked or undertasked. The next button down is team. When you click on that, it's going to give you a list of all members by default who are added into this particular project. It will show you what role they're assigned to. In addition, any role that has a user assigned to it will show up as a separate entry, so you can kind of narrow down and see who's on what team within this project. And now the meat and potatoes. We're going to go into settings. Every Taiga project is very customizable. Now, when we created the project, we gave it a name, we gave it a description. You can also tag the project. So if this project aligns with certain particular initiative or a larger project, you can tag it so that there is a relationship formed between those. Going down a little bit, you can modify whether or not this project is public or private. You can also, in the very bottom here, you can choose to delete this project and completely remove it from the Taiga server. You can also change the logo. I highly recommend creating a logo for every single project. ChatGPT has a good image creator where you can describe your project and say, draw me a picture that represents this, and you can drop it in there. This will be represented on all of the other views. It'll be helpful in identifying the difference between different projects. A lot of people, myself included, I'm very visual. It's much easier for me to pick out an image over a name if I have a lot of projects in the list. It's always easier for me to find a picture. So the first thing I'm going to go through is all of the different project settings. When I go to presets, it's going to ask me to modify the default values within epics, which I haven't touched on yet, user story status, which I have. You can, when you create a new story, what category do you want the default to be? By default, it is new, and I think that's a good place to be. Point selector. By default, all of the points in every single card are set to question mark. You could assume that there's no work that's required for every single card. You could also assume that there's 1 hour per role that's required for every card. I like to leave this at either question mark or 0. That allows the project manager or the change manager to go in and actually assign an estimate on how long that should take. Task status selector, issue type selector, issue status selector, so on and so forth. These are the default values when you create new cards, new user stories, new epics, and I'll get into some of those in future videos. The next section down is modules. When we click on modules, we have a number of options here. When I first created this project, I selected that it was going to be a Kanban project. So that option is selected. In this particular project, though, I may want to also see Scrum, a Scrum representation of the project. I may want to include epics, which just very briefly, an epic is a zoomed out, vaguer kind of line of effort that you're aligning your project to. Projects can have epics within them, and projects can also link to epics within a different project. But I'm going to cover that in more detail when I actually do the video on epics. You can also enable the issues module, which is kind of a bug tracking module. It's built into Taiga and it allows you to track bugs and issues. Notice when I turn that on, immediately I have a new little button that pops up that says issues. I'm going to go ahead and leave that turned on, but I'm going to cover that in just a minute. You also have the option to turn on a wiki. If I click that, you'll notice that wiki pops up. You can create a wiki within this project with resources and documents and how-tos on a whole multitude of things that pertain to this particular project. But if it's a relatively quick project or a short project, that may not be helpful. The last option down here is Meetup. If I turn that on, I have the option to select a couple of different providers, and one of them is custom. So if I have Google Workspaces, which hosts Google Meet rooms, or if I have a Cisco meeting server or anything of the sort, I could dedicate a room for support of this particular project. I could simply type the URL to the meeting room for this project, click the little checkbox, and then right here a little button will pop up that says Meet Up. So the team, whether it be via chat or phone, we can say, hey, let's meet up. They can click on that button and immediately be dropped into a room that is dedicated to this project. The next option here is export. When I click export, it's going to send me an email when this export is ready. And when the export is ready, I can click on a link. I will download a JSON file, and it will include every element of this project, including any attribute modification, any presets, any Google Meet settings, anything that I have gone over up to this point, and anything that I go over after this point will be saved. Think of it as a backup. It also includes all of the tasks, subordinate tasks, epics, etc. Anything within this particular project will get backed up when you do an export. The next option down is reports. You have the option to epics reports, user stories reports, tasks reports, and issues reports. All you have to do is click the Generate URL button and then download CSV. When you do that, it's going to ask you where to save it, and you will get a CSV version of all of the data from this project and only this project in a CSV file. You can then transfer that over to Grafana or Kibana, and you can make really nice, pretty graphs about whatever data it is that you're interested in. Now, CSV is not the prettiest format, raw, but it is all of the raw data in the project, and you can use other tools to make that look really nice. The next major setting over here is attributes. Within attributes, we have statuses. Again, we have epic statuses. Epics I'll cover later. User story statuses, which I've kind of covered already in this module. These are each of the columns that exist on the Kanban board. Task statuses, which are each of the columns for the subordinate tasks within a user story. Issue statuses. I haven't covered issues in detail yet, but I will. And that is it. You can add new statuses. You can rename these statuses. You just click the pencil icon, you can rename it, and you can configure all of the settings per status. The next one down is points. As you saw when I clicked the points button, I had a number of options. It started from 0 and ranged all the way up to 40. If you're using this as hours, you may want to modify these presets. When you're actually in a task, the only option you have is to select whatever option is presented to you. So if these are your options, and this happens to be a 120-hour task, you won't be able to manually input that. You would have to come over here to points, add a new point, and create 120 as an option. Again, these point assignments are estimates, so you can make it whatever you want, and if there's something that doesn't quite match, you can make it an estimate and go from there. The next one down is priorities. Priorities apply to issues. There's low, normal, and high. I haven't covered issues yet, so I'm going to skip right over that. Severities, same thing. It applies to issues, and I'm not going to go over that just yet. Next one is type. This also applies to issues, and I'm not going to cover that at this moment. Now we come to custom fields. You can have custom fields within epics, user story custom fields, task custom fields, and issues custom fields. So let's say for user story custom fields, I want to create a new custom field that I'll see within every single user story that exists. I might put, what is the business value? Question mark. The description is set the value. The type, I'm going to say this is a number, and I'm going to click save. Notice I have the option to create another one. You can create an unlimited number, or at least it may not be unlimited. I have not found the limit to the number of custom fields you can create, but you can create, in theory, an unlimited number of custom fields. Now, real quick, I'm going to go back to the Kanban board, and I'm going to open up my previously set task, or my previously created task. And notice it says here, what is the business value? I can type in 12,000 for $12,000 and save that. This is a way for you to do filtering or scanning or sorting for tasks to find out what tasks have the most business value. You can, the sky is the limit. You can come up with anything that you want to define a custom field as. Going back into settings and attributes, notice and remember before I created the hashtag IT tag. I can also create new preset tags here. Any tag that's created on any user story will appear here, and you can modify the color, and you can also merge tags. You can edit the name of the tag, or you can remove tags. The next one down is due dates. By default, it popped up with a couple of options for due dates. I ended up selecting some arbitrary date on the calendar, but it did come up with some options for me. Using this window here, you can modify the options that are presented to the user when they go to set a due date. And you can do it by user story, task due date, issue due date. The next one down is Kanban options. This one is awesome. Pay attention. Right here I have a thing called swim lanes. Right now there are no swim lanes. This is the only place that you can create swim lanes if you have not created one already. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a swim lane for IT. And I'm going to click the check mark. Then I'm going to create a swim lane for marketing. And I'm going to select the check mark. You can set WIP limits. WIP is short for work in progress. So if somebody has something assigned, or if a project has multiple tasks in the in progress status, you can set the desirable number of projects that are allowed in the in progress queue. Okay? This is valuable if you find that there are bottlenecks taking place often, or you want to, for whatever reason, limit the number of tasks that can actually be in progress at one time. Notice that these limits can be set for every single category, and they can be customized per swim lane. Real quick before I go any further, I'm going to go back to the Kanban board. And notice now that I have an IT swim lane. And when I minimize that, I have a marketing swim lane. I now have two different swim lanes within one project. I can drag cards between one swim lane to the next. There may be user stories that have to bounce between different departments throughout them moving through the various statuses. This is a good way to kind of keep track of who's doing what if there's subordinate or smaller teams working within the project. And if you're mostly concerned with just one swim lane, you can minimize all the rest and just make sure that your stuff keeps moving through your swim lane. But if something needs to move to a different swim lane, it's not hard to move it to that swim lane. I would also recommend that if you move it to a different swim lane, you also associate it with the appropriate assignee or role. Going back into settings, the next thing I'm going to cover is members. This is an important screen. This will show you all of the members within this project and what role every member has. If you want to add a new member, you can click New Member. Everybody who is a member of this server already will appear here, and you can simply select them, choose a role for them, and invite them. They will get an email letting them know that they are invited to participate in this particular project, or if they don't see the email or they don't click on the link, when they log in, they will see this new project on their project dashboard. You can also select the role or change the role, and this little button here allows this person to act as an administrator. So this settings section that I've been operating in for a little while will not appear for anybody in any role unless this admin switch is set to on. If it is off, this user will be able to see everything, but they will not be able to change the settings of this project. Additionally, if you type in new member, let's say you're inviting somebody who's not presently on the server, you're more than welcome to type in an email address here, and when you click send, it will send them an email inviting them to the server. The next section down is permissions. These are the various roles assigned within this project. These are the defaults: UX, design, front, back, product owner, stakeholder, and external user. I'm going to cover 3 of the most important roles up front. An external user is somebody who has not logged into the Taiga server. They do not have an account on the Taiga server. The only things they will be able to see are projects that are marked as public. Why it's important to mark all of your projects as private unless you explicitly want them to be public. Now, when you mark a project as public, web engines, search engines, will be able to crawl your project, and sometimes they will be found through a Google search or something of the sort. If your project is private, your project will never show up on Google. Search engines will not be able to access it, nor will any user who has not actually logged into your server. Notice under external user, there's a point system here under these different categories. Each of these are the modules that I could turn on or off under the project settings up here. Okay, so the external user, as you can see, move my head out of the way, the external user has no permission to do anything in any module. The only thing they can do is see things. The stakeholder, on the other hand, has view-only permissions, but only if they're logged in. So if I want the CEO, for example, to be able to see my project and go in and look and make comments, you would assign him as a stakeholder. If you have another company that you're contracting with and you're doing business with this company and you want them to be able to see your work on whatever the contract is that you've agreed upon, you could make them a stakeholder. They would be able to go in and see what's going on, and they would be able to make comments on tasks. But they won't be able to move cards around. They won't be able to change the point assignments or anything of the sort. The product owner has full permissions in all of the modules. The product owner ideally is going to be the manager or the principal person or group of people in charge of making sure that project works and is completed. Usually I would expect there would only be 1 or 2 people assigned as the product owner. All of the other ones are roles that would be assigned to teams. So your user experience team, in this case, actually, let's go ahead and change it. I'm going to call this managers. Just that easily, I can change the name of this role. I can then change the permissions for the managers. So maybe I want managers to be able to do everything everywhere, but I don't want them to be able to delete user stories. I can simply uncheck that box, and anybody assigned to the manager's role will not be able to delete user stories. The product owner will. In addition, If I wanted to assign a task to a role or a group of people, I could assign the task to managers. This is where you're going to go in, and this part takes a little bit of thought. Who is going to be in what role, and who are the likely groups of people that will be assigned to subordinate tasks. Each one of these can be renamed. You can create new roles and assign permissions to the roles. For the most part, in my experience, most of these get full permission to be able to do whatever they want, but they have different names and different memberships. So maybe I have a handful of people that I want them to be able to do everything on this Kanban board, but when I do task assignment, I may want to assign it to one group or another. Both groups will have full permission to do everything, but this is a handy way to group people into specific teams. Okay, the last part is integrations. You do have the ability to do webhooks. You can integrate with GitHub authentication, GitLab, Bitbucket, and Gogs. I don't have experience with anything here except for GitHub and webhooks. It's a little bit more advanced. I'm not going to be covering how to do webhooks with Taiga, but you're more than welcome to do some research. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you. Okay, now going back to the Kanban board. Overall, it's a very handy tool. It's a very easy way to visually assess what your team is doing. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit so you can kind of see what it would look like. You can't read it now, but I can. And when you're actually using it, it's a very aesthetic tool. It looks pretty. You can also filter what tasks you see based on who they're assigned to and a number of other different fields. So you can pick and choose what it is that you actually see, and it's just really helpful. I've actually set up a couple of Taiga servers at this point. I've set up a Taiga server for 2 professional organizations. I've also set up one at home that I use for things as menial as my children's chores. I invited them to the Taiga server. I changed these columns up at the top to the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and assign them tasks for each day of the week. Each of my kids have a separate swim lane. It has their name on it. So when they log in, they look at their swim lane, and when they're done with their chore, they move that chore from whatever day it is to done. That also allows me to keep track of what chores they've done and when. So the idea here is that Taiga is very flexible. It allows you to choose and define what the statuses are and kind of what it looks like. Taiga, again, is completely open source, and it's super easy to modify. If you want to get into some deeper modification, it could require a little bit more work. But again, everything is open source, and it's generally pretty easy to use. You do need to have, for Taiga to work properly, some sort of an SMTP server or an email server that you can use. There are ways to use a personal Gmail address, for example, so that when something happens in Taiga, it will use your personal address and automatically send an email out to whoever needs to receive a notification. There's also a button up here for notifications. It'll let you know if anything that you're watching or assigned to has changed, and then you can go in and edit your profile. You can change your picture. You can put in a biography. You can also change the start pages. So here it's going to list every single project that you're a member of. By default, the first page you're going to land on is timeline. You can change that to the Kanban board or whatever other module is enabled. That way, when you go to projects and you click in on that project, it's going to bring you by default to whatever page you want to see. That pretty much covers the Kanban functionality. There's a whole bunch that I didn't cover. Really getting to know this tool takes some time, but even getting started with just a day of practice, you can be off and to the races in no time at all. It does not take a lot to learn this tool, and the more you use it, the more you find out how valuable it is. There's a whole lot of functionality that I did not cover. I simply just don't have the time. I wish that I did. But Taiga is an amazing tool. I very much value the Kanban board functionality, the email integration, how easy it was, even server deployment, which again I'll cover in my last video. It was extraordinarily easy to set up this environment, and I'll show you that in a video to come. The next video that I'm going to do is on the Scrum functionality. I'm going to cover how to set up sprints, how to set up sprint task boards, how to do some pretty graphs to kind of keep track of your burn rate and your velocity, things of that nature. I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching. God bless, and we'll see you in the next video. I do want to take a moment to say thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss out on future content. If you have any ideas or requests for content on other technologies or other systems that you'd like me to cover, please drop a comment down below and I'd be more than happy to do a tutorial just for you. Thank you and God bless.